I am your host, Shy Guy, and today I'm joined by three wonderful guests, three wonderful writers over at the Game Haus. We got Kate, we got Ethan, we got Sam in the house, uh, and we are going to be getting you ready for all the Overwatch League action coming your way in just a little over an hour and a half. As soon as Watchpoint is over, we are going to have another crazy week of Overwatch because so far Stage 4 has just been off the walls. Anything goes. It's been pure chaos on all fronts. But we'll get into all the action in just a little bit. We'll be talking about teams, matchups coming up this week. We've got a lot in store, a busy week ahead. But first, since this is Watch House, we need to start off by resetting our watch and letting everybody at home know what we have been up to for the past week. And since we've got a couple of newer, not new guests, but different guests this week, we'll let you guys start things off. Sam, what have you been up to?
Trying my best to balance law school and writing.
Oof.
That's the main job. I also have an article coming out this week about the partnership with the Mayhem Misfits and a charity. Blanking on the name, really embarrassing.
It was the
But
cancer charity. I can't remember what it was either.
yes, the cancer charity, the only one.
Yep. There's only one
And
of those.
and that's a really, really fun, pretty cute article, honestly. And it was the
Gift of
first time
Life
that I've been
Moral
sent PR. Yes.
Yes, that one.
Perfect. Thanks for that shout out, having my back. So that one is pretty fun. That one's coming out. So that's about me, actually, for this week. Pretty boring.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Kate, what about you?
I've been writing a little bit. I've been kind of distracted with work lately, but mostly just been watching games, crying, lots of crying for the Paris Eternal. But other than that, nothing really interesting going on. Just watching games and supporting and loving my teams as usual.
Very nice. Very nice. Ethan?
Not really too much for me either. I mean, reeling after last week, but trying to slowly get the Fate interview published or finished up, I guess, so that it can go out soon. Packing up here because I'm going back to college in a week, so I'll be in a new setup and hopefully a more permanent setup next week when I'm back in my room. So, and then all sorts of stuff going on with that, but I'll still be obviously covering the charge and as much as they do and trying to get the final interview that I have out as well.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. That Fate one should be pretty interesting. The Florida Mayhem, having a very interesting week last week. But for me, I've kind of been still doing my thing, still writing about Vancouver a little bit after last week's crazy upset to the Washington Justice. I wrote another edition of my playoff report, keeping track of the playoff races as we are coming down to the wire. This is going to be an absolutely just bonkers into the season in terms of standing shifting around, people dropping off in the current meta and figuring things out. It's wild to watch right now, since we do have so much to cover going into this week. We're going to move on now to get a little bit of news in here. We've got one major news item to cover before we get on to talking about the good stuff, and that is that just yesterday, actually, the Toronto Defiant announced that Bishop is going to be resigning and leaving the team, the head coach for Toronto, stepping down here. We don't have a lot of details as to why exactly this happened. It seems like something has gone on behind the scenes that has necessitated a move like this. But any thoughts, guys, on what this means for the Defiant? What we kind of feel about this one. Not all at once, please.
I mean, I saw someone on Twitter saying that Bishop was really the one who facilitated the more Western development of the Toronto Defiant. So striking him out of the picture when this has been their goal for a while and this slow transition, they kind of gave up all the stage one progress they had in order to work with this mixed roster. And Bishop was the one facilitating that. So something probably very serious happened if they're kicking him out, considering this was all his vision. And yeah.
Sorry.
No, sorry, that was just about it.
The wording of the tweet is what really has me concerned that something kind of serious went down, just because there wasn't even like a goodbye graphic. It was very blunt, and we haven't really seen anything like that in the Overwatch League, at least not this year. Last year, there was a couple of instances where they were, those were kind of serious situations where it was just like peace and let them go. So a little concerned. And then I did see one thing. I think it was on Upcomer, an interview with Logix. They were talking about how last week Gods and someone else, they sent them to some event in Toronto instead of letting them scrim before the Philadelphia game, which was very confusing to me. And I don't know if maybe that played a part of it, maybe, or like maybe that's one of the tension things, like they were focusing more on PR instead of like on the actual team, and maybe that's the direction they were trying to go with. Maybe, I don't know.
That's really interesting, considering as of last week they were still in the playoff hunt. They were still alive and needed the wins if they wanted to keep a slim chance of making into the playoffs going. So interesting that they made the call to do something like that. Maybe some internal issues over at the Defiant. It'll be interesting to see how this played out. My favorite, not good to ever see someone get relieved of their job. It means that something has gone wrong somewhere. But my favorite part of all of this is getting to see the reemergent of Toronto esports guy coming back in and criticizing the Defiant for not hiring him. This never would have happened if they had hired him instead of Splice.
Of course not.
If they just consulted the 3 years in esports that Toronto esports had.
Yeah, let's not point out that they left Overwatch esports in 2018 and the game was released in 2016. So
that guy's a legend.
He's back.
Yeah, he's back, baby.
I think it was Leg Day was like, listen, this is an absolute win because we get to see more Toronto esports guy, and I want him to stick around because he makes so many good copy bosses.
I mean,
yeah. If you look at our chat right now, Felipe is putting the current one.
Of course, thank you, Felipe. The best part, and I tweeted about this, is the fact that in a situation like that gets your blood boiling, you get you very upset, usually take some time, cool off, respond to it later. He took the time, responded to it later, but it was just as angry as it could have been. It wasn't...
All that man knows is salt.
Yeah.
That's all he knows. It's absolutely hilarious. Professionals, by the way.
So yeah, hopefully we get to see more of him. I'm always down for some new copy pastas, but that's gonna cover it for the news here. We were pretty light on that front this week, which is actually a very good thing considering we have so many games to talk about once we get to that portion of the show that we're gonna need all the time in the world to do that. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna discuss a few topics as we head into this week, a little bit bigger picture stuff. Week 2 of the Overwatch League was absolutely crazy in terms of upsets. Just left, right, and center. Teams were coming out of nowhere to knock off top teams. We had it started with you had London losing to Florida. We had Toronto taking down Shanghai. Then the absolute craziness that went down on Sunday with Vancouver going down to the Justice and Chengdu taking down NYXL 4-0 back to back. The league has kind of just collectively lost its mind right now. So as we head into week 3, let's try to get ahead of it a little bit this time. I think everyone was kind of caught off guard last week, but now we're ready. So where do we think the next big upset is going to come from going into this week? Who do we think is on upset alert, needs to keep watching their back as we go into week 3?
I'll start with the Spark over the NYXL, because right now the Spark have 0 wins out of the 2 games they've played, but NYXL have played 3 games and they're 1-2 right now. The only game they won was over Paris, and Spark played the Atlanta Reign, which we're kind of quickly seeing is one of the top teams in the league right now, and the Guangzhou Charge, which are also coming up really hot right now. I think that the Spark are having trouble adapting, but I think that they're still a much stronger team than a lot of people are giving them credit for right now, and that, not to jump on the bandwagon, but NYXL I think is still a tiny bit overrated in the sense that I think people haven't realized the whole 1-2 thing, and after the way that the playoffs looked last time, I think the Spark could actually take this, and I think that the NYXL need to make sure that they're not too confident because they play the Guangzhou Charge and the Hangzhou Spark. And I feel like they'll be focusing a lot more on the Guangzhou match, and Hangzhou could kind of easily come up and just steal that win from them right under their noses, especially after getting 0-4'd by Chengdu. Whew.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, I think New York is definitely in a spot of trouble right now, having a bit of an identity crisis, which is surprising considering, just the level of talent that is on this team, the number of DPS players. It seems like they could figure out something that would work properly, but they haven't really settled on it right now. And they've definitely got some questions to answer as they come into this week. And Hangzhou is still a talented team. They might not be at the peak of their powers right now, but I wouldn't put it past them to kind of figure things out after getting pounded in the first 2 weeks. They definitely have the potential to turn things around. For me, I'm going to go with something that is kind of a historic, I don't want to say a rivalry, because one of these teams has obviously been the better of the two for the entirety of their existence, pretty much, and that's the London Spitfire and the Houston Outlaws. Now, London, again, should obviously be the favorites coming into this. Even after, losing to Florida last week, they are still a very strong team. That win over Guangzhou is very, very impressive considering where we stand at the moment. So I still think they are clearly like the top team coming into this one, but things always get really weird when London and Houston play. Upsets happen. That was kind of famously had Spitfire's number throughout the regular season last year. So you never know. This will be the first time they get to play this season. And Houston still have potential to kind of put things together. This is their last chance. They are not technically eliminated from the playoffs, but one more loss and they're done. So they're kind of backs against the wall right now. And Spitfire, I definitely think, are going to be, like you said about New York, Spitfire are going to be focusing way more on their other game against Vancouver than I think they will, in the direction of the Outlaws, and that could be a recipe for an upset here. All right, Kate. I think it's your turn.
Okay, my call's kind of dropping, but hopefully y'all can still hear me. My pick for upset of the week is going to be Dallas over the Gladiators. Or excuse me, the Big Geese, as they are now known, because they've changed the branding. Dallas has not won a game since, I think you said stage 3, week 1, week 2?
Yep,
week
over
1.
Paris, I believe.
Yeah, which...
Yikes.
I love them, but it's not that hard to beat them. So that means nothing. So I think this could be a potential big upset just because they have not won in such a long time. Nobody would be expecting it. And therefore, the Gladiators could be going into this thinking, oh, we'll furrow them easy and let their guard down, which has been known to happen in the past. The Gladiators are a strong team, but they do tend to fall just short just because they get a little bit overconfident, I think. We've seen this happen in the past with them, and even though Dallas has been struggling a lot, and they have had some brief moments of greatness with a couple of their DPS picks in Taimu. Putting Taimu back on has helped them a little bit. I don't know per se if that'll help them going up against the Gladiators, but I just think they have such a big unknown factor about them that it could be a potential big upset. And if they do manage to do it, I'll laugh because what the hell, man? Overwatch League's an anime.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much to the point where even something like this is like totally within the realm of possibility. I mean, it doesn't seem likely considering what we've seen from these two teams, and I do think we have a decent sample size now, but I think last week showed literally anything is possible at this point. So, Sam, what do you got in the upset department this week?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I don't think Dallas are going to win. I think that they're going to lose every game that they have remaining. I think that they're probably the worst team in the league. I have Florida beating the Valiant, and I want to say that there's no bias coming from me at all here. As the resident Florida fan. This week, the maps they have are Ilios, Temple of Anubis, Hollywood, and Junkertown. And I think Sire Player dominates KSF on Ilios, Junkertown, and Hollywood if they play it there on second. I think that they're 3 great Widow points, and you really only see Widow when the points aren't designed for Reaper or Mei. And I think that those 3 points favor Widow, which will help Florida in this series, and I just think that they're still criminally underrated. With last week, everyone saying that the Spitfire just screwed up. I think you have to give more credit to Florida. I think that they played well. I think the Bird Ring was the only player on that roster that didn't turn up, and I think that Florida actually outclassed the Spitfire for the majority of that series. So I think that Florida might not actually be coming into this series with much of the underdog status, in my opinion. I think that it's almost 50-50, and that's taking into consideration that Valiant are still fighting for that playoff spot. So that's how highly I rate them. I think this could be close.
I definitely am right there with you. I think this is going to be one of the, more surefire close series in my mind from this week. I mean, I think there's a lot of games that could wind up being just blowouts in one way or the other, but I think this one is going to come close. I think both these teams are playing pretty strong Overwatch in the current meta, but it's going to be fascinating to watch no matter what. So Valiant, keep an eye out. You can't take Florida lightly anymore. At least that's we're so far from the point where they were at in the first three stages of the league, where you could kind of brush them off and take that as a free win. That's no longer the case. So everyone's got to keep an eye out. Let's move on now. We're going to talk a little bit about the playoff race itself as we are coming down the stretch here. We're in a very interesting point where it feels like most of the teams that are going to get in might have already been decided. There's not going to be a lot of room for movement, but I want to know if we think that any of teams in the top 6 currently will start there. We'll move down to the top 12 if we need to. The question is this: do we think that any of the current top 6 are going to drop out of that at the moment? So just to give everyone a bit of a recap, the top 6 as it currently stands: Vancouver, New York, San Francisco, Hangzhou, the Gladiators, and London are the current top 6. Vancouver, New York, and San Francisco are already secured their top 6 spots. They're not going anywhere. They are into the playoffs for sure. Those other 3, Hangzhou, LA, and London, still fighting for their spots and still very much in a battle with several teams kind of right on their heels. So Sam, you went last time. Let's let you kick things off for this one. Do you see any movement when it comes to that top 6?
No, I don't, which might not be a very interesting thing to say on a podcast, but outside of the 6 sit Seoul, Philadelphia, and Shanghai. And according to Captain Planet, who put up this really interesting graphic about the likelihoods of people getting into the top 12, top 6, the highest chance of those teams are Seoul with it's small, 37% chance, which is not great. It's you can't ignore a percentage that high, but just above them, Spark, teams that don't look that great, but they still have a 57% chance. So I think that's a large enough difference to assume that the top 6 will stay as it is, especially with this. I don't think the Spark have a very hard schedule, even though they look bad. I mean, Ethan said, that they're probably a little bit better than people are ranking them. I think Reinforce has them something like 17th in these power rankings, which is a little bit rough, I think, but we'll see. I think that it stays as it is.
I think there's a very real possibility. I mean, that kind of comes more from like the inertia and the standing that Spark had built up over the course of the season than anything to do with their current form. I just don't have confidence in them right now. They look like an absolute mess at the moment, and I know that they're currently 2 games up in the loss column on everyone who is trying to kick them out of that top 6. But I think one of those 3 teams, and even potentially Atlanta, is in the mix. They are playing at a really high level right now. They have a pretty manageable schedule from this point on. So I think there's kind of an outside shot for Atlanta, but the team I'm actually going to pick to replace Spark is going to be the Dynasty. They have their future is kind of sitting in their hands right now, and the futures of the teams around them, because they play both Shanghai and Philly as we come down the stretch here. So they have the possibility to either kind of punch their own ticket into that playoff spot, or kind of play spoiler to the other teams trying to do it. So if anybody's gonna make it out of there, I think it's probably Seoul. I think they're playing the best at the moment. Shanghai could make a run here, but I think they might have blown their shot a little bit last week going down to Toronto, when that's a game. If you are a top 6 team in this league, you need to be winning that. Seoul got a gutsy 5-map win over the Valiant, and I think it gets a little bit easier from here for them. So I like their chances, and I don't think Spark is going to be able to hold it together.
I think most of us kind of agree that the Spark are not really looking to keep their top 6 spot. But instead of Seoul, I'm no bias whatsoever gonna say Philly will take that spot. After last weekend, I'm not as scared as the Vancouver Titans anymore. And so I'm gonna have some blind faith in my boys this weekend when it comes to that game. The Paris game tonight will kind of help cement, I think, that spot for them, or like get them a little bit closer to it. So even though I'm wearing a Paris jersey, I'm pretty sure Philly's going to take that as well. The Seoul game will be kind of iffy, but they look like they have a really good shot. And so long as they don't be themselves, I think they can really take this. So long as they just actually communicate for once, that would be great. Neptune, no heal people. Don't leave Boombox in the lurch. If they can just work on those things, and I know they've been working hard and practicing because Poco hasn't been streaming as much this week, and that's how I usually can tell when they're actually working. I think they have a pretty good shot. I really do think they have a good shot.
Yeah, they definitely find themselves in the mix with, at least, they're in a situation where every team kind of wants to be, where they firmly kind of control their own destiny at this point. If they can put the wins on the board, then they pretty much, I can't see them not making the playoffs. If, for example, they went they won their final 3 games of the season, I think it would be pretty hard for them to not grab a top 6 spot. So they've at least put themselves in the position to make that happen. So going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Ethan, you got anything to add on this?
I actually have my opinion is probably the most similar to Kate's. I think that Fusion actually probably have the best chance out of anyone. Although I was looking with the fact that the Dynasty play both the Dragons and the Fusion, because of these middle of the road teams facing other middle of the road teams, it's less likely that one of them will kind of shoot way ahead of the others and be able to take one of those spots. So although I originally wrote that both the Spark or the Spitfire could kind of fall out of the contention, I'm more and more thinking along the lines of Sam, that the top 6 will kind of remain the top 6, and that the 6 after will mostly remain the same. There's an argument that Valiant could make that top 12, but it basically requires one of the teams that are in the 6th through 12th to really, really fall out, and I just don't see Chengdu, Guangzhou, or especially Atlanta falling that hard. You could have them dropping maps or dropping series even, and still the Valiant would basically still have to be beating the San Francisco Shock and the LA Gladiators, and if they lose even one of those, it might not be feasible.
That's the problem for me with the Valiant. I think they are probably playing on a similar level to Guangzhou and Chengdu right now, maybe a little bit lower than those 2 teams who have kind of figured out the meta pretty strongly right now. But the biggest problem for them is what you said right there, that those 2 games in the rivalry weekends, the battle for LA and then the California Cup, are just 2 brutal matchups as you are trying to save your season and get into the playoffs. It's about as tough as you could really close out the season with. Yes, it's possible for them to get those upsets and to have a shot here, but it's a long shot at this point, and it requires some help. So I think it's one too many things for Valiant to probably jump up into the top 12, though I would love to see it. It would be phenomenal to see one of those teams that went 0-7 during a stage actually make the playoffs and have a shot here. But unfortunately for Valiant, their chances are running out. The loss against Seoul last week was kind of a backbreaker. All right, so let's move on to look forward to this week a little bit, and we're gonna start with the WatchHaus player to watch this week, brought to you by Clown College, because that's what Overwatch is right now.
That's where I'm going back in a week, in case you didn't know.
Well, you've got the hair for it.
Hey.
Okay. So let's talk now. We're looking forward into this week. Who do we want to shine a little bit of a spotlight on? Who do we think is going to be very important for their teams as we go into it? For me, I'm going to kick it off with a member of the Seoul Dynasty who I just picked to make the top 6 here, and who I think have an insanely important week of games. They really need these wins here and now. They play Toronto and Guangzhou. Now, both of those I think are very winnable games for Seoul, but they are both also very losable games. And the pressure is on here for the Seoul Dynasty. This is the opportunity to actually make this happen. So I'm gonna go with one of their DPS players, and the DPS player for Seoul who has been kind of playing most consistently, and that is Illicit. They've been subbing Fitz and Fleta in for each other for the most part, but Illicit has been kind of the one constant for this Seoul team in Stage 4, and I think he's going to be a big part of it. If I look at the rest of the roster, I am extremely confident in basically every position but the DPS side of things. I think their tank line is fantastic. I think their supports are experienced and very, very cool under pressure. The DPS is where I think they can really make some headway and find that next level to really push them into the playoffs here. I think this week is going to tell us a lot about exactly where Seoul stands.
I mean, with mine, I went with Zachary on the field, not because I think that they have any chance of making it to the playoffs, but this is so that they have a chance of winning a single game. Because, like Sam said, I think that they might be one of the bottom teams, if not the bottom team in the league right now, and might go 0-7 this stage, considering their strength of schedule. Zachary, I forget if we were talking about it on this show, but everyone was all of the Fuel fans were basically like, all right, yeah, Fuel's not doing great, but just wait till Zach gets off a Brig present. Wait till he gets out. And look, he's out, and he's not doing really much of anything. You've got AKM and Taimu subbing in for each other, and that decision's already up in the air enough. And I was originally going to say Note for this because Note's just been popping off. Unco as well. I will give Unco the love he deserves.
Thank you.
The tank and support lines for Dallas are doing pretty all right, but their DPS line is just... Zach needs to watch his positioning. He needs to make these better plays and pop off more if Dallas wants to get a single win the rest of the 2019 season and not go 1-13 for the entire second half of it. So
yeah. Yikes. Well, I'll go. I have Birdring because I am a very compassionate fan. I know that we beat them last week. So I'll say Birdring. I think London really needs Birdring to pop off. I think that it's not just that he's playing poorly. I think that he becomes shy. He becomes not confident in himself, in his abilities. And I think when that happens, it seems like the comms are a little bit dry in the team as well. The whole team loses confidence. And even in some of their content, they make fun of Birdring for being really inconsistent. So I think that if he can show good performances, as they say in Korea, I think London are still one of the top 6 teams in the league, and I think that they could go very far. Yeah. But it's very important that they win a couple more games at least to secure that top 6. Yeah. I think, are they secured?
No, I mean they are not secure. They are right on the bubble right now. They are the 6th place team at the moment. So everybody is right on their heels, and if they continue to struggle a little bit, that can be gone in an instant. They are by no means safe, even if they should kind of be able to take care of business down the stretch here. It's not a sure thing by any means. So they definitely need Birdring, and I like what you said about the confidence side of things, because against Saya last week, he kind of just disappeared. Saya was winning every duel in that matchup, and when that's happening and your Widowmaker kind of stops taking those fights, it's over. Okay. Kate, we still need you.
Yeah, still need me. Sorry, my thing is freaking out a little bit, so my internet's being bad. But my pick for player to watch will be Mr. Stratus, the future Hokage. Sorry,
Shadesman himself.
Shadesman himself. Love Stratus in this household. I really, really think that the Justice might really go 7-0 this stage. And so I'm really excited to see more of Corey and Stratus. But Stratus, unfortunately, gets overshadowed by Corey a lot. Love Corey. He's a great player, but Stratus is really killing it on May. And I think a lot of people are missing that because of, Corey getting these amazing, last hits on so many people that Stratus is usually, picking at. He's chipping away at them and damaging them. And I just think he's a really great player. And it's really exciting to finally see him play DPS, because I think they tried subbing him in on Brig a couple of times during the season and he didn't do so hot, but now we get to see his true power that I do fully believe came from Mason's sunglasses. I think those were the key this entire time.
Probably.
Not Roll Lock, but Mason's sunglasses.
Yeah, I think Stratus definitely has a case as the best May in the league at the moment. He was absolutely insane against Vancouver. The amount of long range projectile pressure that they were putting on the Titans between him and Corey was overwhelming. There was a moment, it was on Havana when they Vancouver was trying to kind of spawn camp them at the very beginning, like all teams do. Stratus built up a blizzard in 30 seconds and just kind of single-handedly won them that fight, and it's really insane to watch. He has a lot of opportunity, especially with the attention that Corey gets. So they work really well together, and I think that has been the biggest thing that has changed for Washington, is those two really coming online recently has made them a team to be scared of going forward, and potentially one of the best teams in the league under 2-2-2. We'll see exactly what level they can maintain for the rest of the stage, because no matter how good they are, I think last week was a little bit of an anomaly. They were firing on all cylinders, playing as well as possible. So now the consistency is the next thing, and it's going to be fun to watch for sure. And they've got two games that they should be winning this week to keep that top spot right now in terms of the stage standings. But let's move on now to kind of the real reason that we are here, and that is, of course, the predictions. And we've got a lot of them this week. We have so many games that are up in the air. Usually we have a handful of games that we want to talk about that we find really interesting that people disagree on. This week we are covering nearly every game. So let's
10 games that the four of us have differences on.
Exactly. So it's gonna be a little bit rapid fire here. We just because we've got so much to talk about, but we're gonna start going through these. And we'll kick it off here with what in a lot of ways might be the most interesting game of the week in the London Spitfire versus the Vancouver Titans. The storylines of the two teams coming off these massive upset losses and trying to bounce back from that is really fascinating. Two teams that fancy themselves contenders as we get down the stretch here and want to be competing for the eventual playoff championship at the end of the season. London, of course, last year's champions. Vancouver, the team that has been at the top of the standings for the entire year. So it's going to be a fascinating game to watch. Sam, let's start with you. How do you see this one going?
I have this thing in my head where I think that the Titans are going to 4-0 London. I think that they're going to be mad. I think that they have a little bit more attitude in their team. Huxell and Bumper, they're going to be mad. They're going to be angry. They're going to come out and play their best. I think that even after a bad loss like that match against Florida last week for London, I think that they're still a little bit more laid back. We're going to probably float into playoffs and then pick it up. I don't think that they let losses affect them like Vancouver would. I think Vancouver are going to dominate, actually.
Interesting, because I look at this and I am kind of doing the classic Vancouver runaway thing of like assuming the worst is going to happen even though my team is really good. And so I come from a place of being hypercritical of Vancouver.
Shout out to Bonnie on Twitter.
Exactly. That's the mood right there. Is always assuming that the worst is going to happen for the Vancouver Titans. And after last week, I just can't get the images out of my head of like Bumper feeding his brains out at times against the Justice and just all of the problems that they had, their cooldown usage, their ultimate economy. Everything was just kind of a mess last week. And it's not that I don't have faith that they will be able to fix those things. It's that I don't necessarily think it's going to happen immediately. They played that game on Sunday. They're playing again the first match of the week this time here on Thursday. And I just don't see them having put it all together just yet. Whereas London, I think they had a particularly bad game and Florida played very, very well. But I think their issues are a little bit more solvable. They are the more kind of inconsistent team. So I could easily see them coming out and just kind of flopping over and being terrible again. And like you said, Vancouver just stomping. But I think there are some real fundamental issues with the Titans right now. I don't think Bumper is a good Orisa player at all. He hasn't shown us anything in that regard that makes me confident. So I'm very worried, and until I'm gonna need to see Vancouver kind of prove it again. They can't just get by on the benefit of the doubt from being the best GOATS team anymore.
My logic is actually very similar to Sam's. I picked Vancouver, and of course, I think it's just part of me. It's like habit. Vancouver's best in the league, so it's like why bother changing that at this point? But I think that kind of Vancouver is very momentum based, and because they were winning so much, it kind of kept that forward momentum moving. And they really didn't struggle after like the occasional loss or anything like that because they have so much of this winning momentum. I also know that Vancouver is pretty good when it comes to control maps, and London is absolutely awful when it comes to control maps. So if Vancouver are successfully able to take the first map of the series, I think they can really kind of build that momentum throughout the rest of it and really kind of steamroll London as it goes on more and more. I don't necessarily know if I'd predict a 4-0, but I do think that it'll be kind of Vancouver as soon as they start to pick up that steam that they can really kind of get going. That's kind of my logic, which is less influential on why I actually made the pick because I'm just like, it's Vancouver, of course they're gonna win. But that's me validating my choice.
I actually agree with Bradley. I think London's gonna take it for no reason. Firm believer in the aces honk movement, but I do think they'll be able to take it. I don't think it's going to be a 4-0 either way. It's definitely going to be tough. I think this could go to map 5 because London, much like Philly, sucks at control. Except for lately, Philly's actually been doing great. But London does suck at control. But they are good at other maps. And I really do think that so long as like Prophet and Birdring like really remain focused and like maintain the confidence that y'all were talking about earlier, I think they could do it. I really do think so, especially if it goes to like a map 5 situation, because they are the clutch kings, despite what Monty tweeted out today, probably cursing Vancouver in doing so. But I think they've got it.
It's either way, this is going to be a really fun game to watch and gonna, I think, give us a little bit of a better idea of exactly how these teams are performing right now, whether those losses last week were a blip on the radar or whether there's signs of bigger issues. So an important game for both teams to be sure. But Let's move on to the second game of tonight, and that's going to be the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Paris Eternal. Now, I am not confident in either of these teams. I'm not gonna lie.
Neither am I.
I absolutely can't be at this point, and I don't think there's anything that either of them have showed to this point in this meta to really change that mind. So to me, this is very much a toss up. But I think Philadelphia, at least last week, they showed a little bit of grit that I wasn't I didn't think they necessarily had. I thought they were kind of going to be a team that fell apart a little bit towards the end of the season, but they showed us something last week, and I think they have enough to do it here. These are must-win games for both teams. Philly, if they want to make a run for the top 6, Paris to keep their slim hopes of playoffs alive. But I think Philly takes this in the end, and yeah, but this one, in my mind, also going to be incredibly close.
Well, these are my 2 teams that I write about. So
this is your moment.
This is my moment. I am very conflicted on multiple levels about this entire situation. When Philly faced off against Paris the first time, that was during stage 1, and that was when Goats was really prominent. Both of them were really sucking at it, so we never got to really see what they could do against each other. With Rollock, now we're going to be able to see Soon and Shadowburn on DPS. We're going to be able to see EQ and Carpe on DPS. And those things on paper sound like, yeah, they'll both do really great. It'll be a really close battle between all of them, and it'll just work. Carpe and EQ haven't been doing that great. Soon and Shadowburn have not been doing that great. As a result, the rest of their teammates have not been doing that great. Sato's still feeding. Poco still isn't nailing Pokebombs. Neptuno's feeding. Same thing's kind of happening over at Paris. Cruz is feeding. That's mean, but I love him. He does still do it. He's just a very aggressive Lucio. Gray hasn't been doing that hot. Not hot enough where we would have to sub Hippin, God forbid. And then, you have Finzi, who is fairly consistent, and then you have Cloudy, who is also a really inconsistent main tank. They're both messes, and I love them. But this one's going to be a really tough one to predict. On paper, Philadelphia should come out on top in this, but there is the potential chance, I can speak English, that Paris can come out on top here, and I think it's because Philly is really, really cocky. And I think that cockiness will bite them in the ass, as it's known to do. But I don't know. Part of me is like, I'll be happy either way, but I'll also be sad either way. It's probably going to go to a map 5 just because Philly doesn't know any other way except for, I think it was Houston. They didn't disappoint me with Houston. That was the nice time. But that's a very rare occurrence in my life when it's not a map 5. So I'm going to go with Philly just because they can clutch it out on map 5s, usually.
Fair enough.
I'm going to go with Philly as well, mostly just because I predicted Paris once and they kind of burned me. Actually, I predicted them twice, once in week 1 and once in the last week, and they burned me both times I predicted them. So I'm kind of like, yeah, let's move on to Philly. Paris is at a 1-3 record for the stage right now, and Philly last week looked pretty good, even despite taking it to map 5s. Philly did look really good, and I think they're really starting to build this momentum. Play Kib and you get a 4-0. That's all I'm saying. I said it with Fraggy, and they never played Fraggy, and they didn't do well. So, play Kib, get a 4-0, please.
Ethan.
I know they're not going to do it. I know
they're not going to play Kib.
They're not going to play Kib.
You and I need to have a little come to Jesus meeting right now. They're never going to play Kib. This is the only reason I didn't like this trade, was because I knew he was going to end up on the bench.
Don't make me so sad.
There's no way they're going to sub out Carpe. There's no way they're going to sub out EQO. It's just
Sam, what's your opinion?
I say play Kib and EQO. Put that in there. Get that duo going. This meta is kind of like 2 projectile DPS players with a Mei and Hanzo on a lot of maps, so that could be really... I don't know. Carpe probably has a good Hanzo, so probably don't sub him out. But I'm the only one who picked Paris this week, which I think is pretty surprising because I see them kind of on even footing. I don't have any great reasons because I don't think Paris or Philly are a very good team. Sorry, Kate. However, I think that this could be a 50-50. So I thought if I'm the only one picking Paris, it seems like it could just be a free game. If that, I'm the only one going that. So
Fair enough.
that's the only
And
reason I went that way.
I've decided that I need a free game, so I'm changing my pick to Paris. But the real
in solidarity. We'll change it to Paris.
the real reason I'm changing my pick to Paris is 3 words: Shadowburn Revenge Game. I think.
Why did you have to say that? Because that's a whole other tirade I can go right now.
Okay, well, we unfortunately don't have enough time for that. We'll get that one off the air, Kate, because I am very interested to hear that. But we've still got a ton of games to talk about here, and not a lot of time to do it. So we're gonna speed things up. We're gonna head to the next game of the night: the Toronto Defiant taking on the Florida Mayhem. The battle of the 2 teams that are out of the playoffs right now. They are unfortunately already eliminated, despite the recent kind of turnarounds. Where we're not going to be seeing too much more of them. But this game is going to be interesting. They're both fresh off really good upsets last week, and I think it's going to be fun. I'm sticking with my theme of revenge games here, but this time it's going to be Logic's in my mind. I think he. I just want to see him and Saya Player go at it. That's all I want out of this matchup, and whoever comes out on top. They've got my vote, but I'm gonna give it to Logic's just for kind of sentimental reasons here, and I hope we get to see plenty of those 2 widows going head to head. Sam, this is your team, so why don't you take it?
I have Florida. I think both teams need to win this game to prove that those games last week weren't flukes. To beat another low-tiered team convincingly, or even in a tough map 5, I think would prove a lot of people that these teams are on the rise. I think I'm most excited about this match because I've heard, they're not so subtle, but I'm pretty sure Swoosh is going to be leading them out of the tunnel. I don't know how or why. I'm pretty sure he left that team with some angry feelings, but I think Swoosh is in the building.
That's hilarious.
But, so that's exciting. I think that this could be a close game. I think Saya dominates Logic's, hopefully. I think Saya plays. This is his meta. I think that he really shines. So it's really just optimism on my part.
I don't know, Mr. Logic's is pretty scary.
Yes,
I think
he
the
is.
majority of the Philly-Toronto game, I was literally just saying, like, Logic's no, Logic stop. I'm going to be going with Toronto for this one. Usually, especially since I'm now embracing the worse than Chuck E. Cheese thing when it comes to these predictions, I would have picked Florida. But Florida's actually been looking pretty strong, but I think Defiant has a better upset chance, and so I'm going with the meme pick here. Also because I love gods.
I've been flip-flopping on so many of the first days.
Yeah, I've been watching.
I originally was Paris and then changed to Philly. I almost just swapped the next game's pick, but I'm now just officially swapping my Toronto pick to Florida Mayhem because Sam's speech inspired me. The thought of Swoosh inspired me. But actually, it's because, that's part of the reason. But I also feel that Toronto has a lot of really good individual players, but their team unity and cohesion is still a bit lacking. Florida, I think, actually has that aspect over Toronto, and is better in that sense that they might not have as many standoff individual players besides Saya Player, but they have this team unity that I don't think Toronto really has. And I think that it'll be enough to get them the win, although this one is just so on the fence. I really just kind of think I could use another pick that might get me ahead. So, but I do think that Florida actually could take this one. I think either could take this one.
Yeah.
These are this is hard to pick this week, guys.
Spoiler alert to everybody at home, we know nothing. No one knows anything anymore when it comes to Overwatch. No one.
The script writers stopped talking to me like weeks ago.
Yeah, you've just kind of collectively lost our minds. So there's really in my mind, you barely even have to justify a pick at this point to just throw it out there because literally anything can happen. So let's move on to the final game of Sunday night or of Thursday night. We've got a crazy slate of games here this evening. In terms of just all of them, I think are going to be close and interesting in their own way. But we got the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Guangzhou Charge. who, two teams with kind of mixed results in this stage so far. Seoul had a rough week one just in terms of their schedule and the teams they played, bounced back last week. Guangzhou, outside of that loss to London, has been looking very, very strong the entire stage so far. And interestingly, come into this game as kind of the overwhelming favorites for the TGH crew. I'm going to be the only one taking the Seoul Dynasty. I don't know. I like the way this team is shaping up as we head down the stretch. The lineup that they've kind of settled on now that they've gotten past some of the drama. They've gotten rid of Fissure. They have settled on Michelle as the tank partner for Marvel. The support line getting a little bit steadier, although they need to keep Ru Jae-hong in the game most of the time. I don't like him coming out. I think he's a leader for them. So they definitely have kind of started to put it together a little bit, and I think this is basically a toss up for me. So I went with the team that no one else is picking because I still need to make up some ground when it comes to these predictions. Everybody, we got to catch Sam. He's running away with it, but we can't let it be get out of hand really.
I mean, my argument is I'm a Guangzhou stan, and that's it. That's my only argument, is I love Rio more. So, I could see Seoul actually winning this in a very dominant fashion. The last game between these two was a 4-0 in favor of Seoul, but Guangzhou is now kind of on a tirade of beating these teams that beat them once before. They beat Chengdu, Shanghai, and Hangzhou recently, who all beat them the first time around. And I think they're looking for Seoul's blood next. So, and because Guangzhou has a bit more stability with the roster compared to Seoul kind of swapping things up, I think Guangzhou just might have a bit of. I do think that they're the favorites here.
They played Fraggy once, so they have my undying love forever. That's my reasoning.
That's good reasoning.
That'll do it. Okay, we are running a little short on time, so we're gonna have to start flying through these a little bit because we still have 6 picks to work our way through here before we're done. We still have an insane number of toss-up games going down. So let's move on over to Friday. San Francisco taking on Shanghai. Kate, I'll let you kick us off since you are the lone member of the team here picking the Dragons. Why do you think they're going to be able to?
I'm surprised about that. Well, they just beat them in the Stage 3 finals. they're kind of the champions of Stage 3. They have been looking a little shaky, especially against Toronto, but I still have faith in the Dragons. Shanghai's come a very long way. I don't think losing one game to a lower tier team, sorry Toronto, makes them a bad team by any means. I still think they've got the competitive spirit. Ding still exists. They've been bringing out Kaguri, which has been exciting, and I don't know. I'm positive they can do it.
Fair enough. San Francisco, in my mind, they've probably made the transition to 2-2-2 better than any of the top teams in the league. They have done it really without any problems. I mean, they've kind of haven't missed a beat whatsoever so far, and I think that's kind of going to continue here. They're in a position where they can kind of play around with things, so I could see them kind of trying some weird strats and Shanghai taking it, but I think if they play straight up, San Francisco looks a little too strong right now, to be honest. After that win against the Gladiators last week, I think they're kind of the clear number one at this point.
I agree.
Yeah, that was all my argument as well.
Okay, that one's pretty easy then. Let's move on to NYXL taking on the Hangzhou Spark. Two teams that have been pretty disappointing so far in Stage 4. Really trying to find their footing. So who do we think is going to be able to do that at least here in Week 3?
I mean, I kind of made my argument for the Spark earlier. I'm also just really doing this because I want to believe really badly that the Spark can still do it and can take the XL. I originally had the Spark beating the Hunters, and then when I took into consideration the Hunters beating the NYXL so badly, I'm like, maybe I'll predict the Spark over NYXL instead. I think that there's a chance for anything in this coming week, and I want to believe the Spark can win, and that's my belief is my argument. You can't fight that.
I also went with the Spark. Ethan was kind of talking about it earlier. NYXL, I think, they're kind of overrated at this point. Like they do have really good players, but as a team, they don't work well together as much as people think they would when you consider how much talent they have on their roster. Darby was talking about it when we were in Atlanta. She got to interview them, and she's talking about like, yeah, they're all very confident in their own abilities. And I think that kind of says a lot about how they work as a team. The Spark, they've had some drama with their social media with Crystal and all that, but they're hanging in there. They're trying their best. So I think they have a good shot. And also, I just want Darby to be happy.
Yeah, me too. That's kind of also my reason.
Him, no, me more so than you. I will maintain
that's fine. Yeah.
I will maintain that.
Yes.
Okay. Sam, what do you think about this one?
I just think that the Sparks' problems are greater than NYXL's. I think actually one of NYXL's greatest problems at the moment is that Libero is their best Reaper, best Mei, and best Hanzo on the team. So it's very unfortunate. If you could clone him, they'd be great. I think Meko's also underperforming, but I still think that they're a top 6 team. Maybe 6th, maybe 7th. I can't say that about the Spark. So it might be close, but I'm just going to have to go with NYXL, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I just have more faith in New York to fix their problems because this is a team that we have never seen be bad. Yeah. The 2 losses they've already suffered in the stage is probably up there for one of their worst stages as an Overwatch League team. Maybe with stage 2 losing to Atlanta twice was not great, but they've been at the top or very near the top, their entire existence, and I don't think that's necessarily going to change now. It's not the best meta for them, and they clearly have problems, but there's too much talent here for this to...
I think you have to assume that a team like them will pull it together.
Yeah.
I think.
Until it doesn't happen, I'm going to kind of assume that New York is a good team, even though I don't think they're playing super well right now. I have enough faith in them for at least a little while longer. They are starting to test that, but we're not quite there yet. Okay, we'll move on now. The Houston Outlaws and the London Spitfire. I talked about this one a little bit earlier. I made it clear why I think Houston has a chance in this one, and that's why I'm going to take the pick here. I think London is... Obviously, I think the more talented team and probably the better pick here. But I think that there's some potential for an upset from Houston. They do weird stuff, and occasionally they pull something out when they really have no business doing it. So that's all of my reasoning. But it might not be good, but it's what I'm going with.
I just noticed that on their sheet, it appears that nobody's picked London twice. So everyone who picked London to beat Vancouver predicted them to lose to Houston.
That's crazy.
That's just a little bit of a odd tidbit about our ranking system right here. I just think London kind of... I think they're solid enough to beat Houston, and that's kind of about my argument. Because it's Houston, and Houston's been looking pretty good, but I don't think they have looked up to stage 3 standards in stage 4 when everyone else is kind of on that same multi-DPS, well, multi being more than 0. When everyone else is playing a lot of DPS, I think Houston kind of looks a little bit more middling. And London, they did lose to Florida, but I also think that Florida was really good and that it was just some players not necessarily playing to the highest standard on London. And I think London will come back.
I want Jesse to have one game where she's happy this weekend because I don't think they're going to beat Washington. So that's my reasoning.
There you go.
All right. Okay. Moving on. Seoul versus the Toronto Defiant.
Kate.
This was before the Bishop incident, okay?
Does that make that much of a difference?
Yeah, losing your coach is kind of a big deal, especially when it's that abrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, abrupt for us. This could have been brewing for whatever the hell's going on. I don't know. I just want Gods to be happy. He's a very nice boy. His head is very bald, and he's a memer. I just want people to have fun.
Prepare
Also,
to be below
Soul,
Chuck
I'm
E.
never
Cheese
sold
again.
on. I don't know why. I love Rijahang, but I'm never sold on them.
All right.
This is more
prepare to be
personal picks
under-
at this point.
Prepare to be under Chuck E. Cheese. That's all I'm saying.
Who predicted more games last week than all of y'all?
It was.
That's
these
right,
ga-
the Bren of the group right here.
Fair enough. You put points on the board last week, so
I
who,
did.
who are we to judge? Okay. I don't think there's a ton for us to really touch on here. I mean, Toronto, despite winning against Shanghai last week, I still don't see them as a good team, and I see Seoul as a pretty good team right now. That's pretty much where it comes down for me.
Agree.
Okay.
We'll all be kicking ourselves if we're wrong, though.
Oh, I mean,
Please
no.
be wrong so I can rub it in their
Of
faces.
course.
Yeah.
I mean,
you get full bragging
well,
rights
Kate
before-
has plenty of chances here where she has gone against the grain, so eventually some of these are going to be right. The next
If
one
I
to
go
here,
just crazy enough.
the next one here, which I would like to
Is
say
crazy.
is crazy, but I'm still not sure about Vancouver. We're talking about the Titans versus the Fusion here. Kate, again, you have gone against the grain. You're the only one picking Philly here. So why don't you tell us?
I think I talked about it earlier. I'm not as scared of Vancouver at the moment, just because Washington did 4-0 them, which I'm sorry, Bradley. I love the Titans. That was the most hype game I've watched in a really long time, and Washington just exposed a lot of their weaknesses, and Philly was hopefully paying attention, and I'm going on blind faith. I just want them to please your God do their jobs. That's all I'm asking for this.
I don't think this is crazy because I think Vancouver has real problems here. If it were a team that I had more confidence in than Philly, I would maybe be right there with you. But I don't think Vancouver's fallen that far. They'll be able to turn it around somewhat here. And I have at least that much faith in them.
Now, if they put in Stitch, I'll probably change my mind, but
who knows? I mean, Hureg was bad last week, straight up. And they need an answer on that side of things. Either him getting back to the form he showed in week 1, or maybe Stitch coming into the lineup is a potential answer there. But they cannot just roll with that level of DPS play for the rest of the season, or they're in real trouble.
And I picked Vancouver, but when you really bring down to the Carpe versus Hureg Widow battle kind of mentality, I mean, you kind of do have to imagine Carpe would probably be the victor in that, unless we get quote quote Godreg. Thanks Achilles for that one. Yeah, I still think Vancouver's just a little bit too solid, but I could honestly see this one. I could see being wrong about this one as well. If Philly, they play to the level of their opponents, as the casters always say, and if Philly plays to Vancouver's level, they could probably take it.
And I'm just hoping the show move quicker. I think Vancouver 3-1, 4-0. I think, yeah.
Okay, let's wrap this up then. We've been talking for long enough. We got one more game to go over here. Guangzhou versus New York. We've talked about both these teams already, so I don't think we have to dive too deep into it. I think Guangzhou is playing very strong Overwatch right now, and New York really is not. So that's kind of that's it for me. I mean, New York could figure things out, but I'm not quite ready to say that they will.
Blind faith, hopeless, youthful optimism. That's kind of my logic as well. I figure if I predict Guangzhou for winning both these games, then they'll only lose one, and then if they win one, then they win the next week's, and then they get into playoffs, and that's all I care about. So there we go.
Fair enough.
they played Fraggy once.
They're just blessed forever now.
They win every
They just have that's it. That's all I wanted this entire season. Just one game. That's it.
one map, bro.
Just one map, bro. That's all I wanted.
Okay. At this point, I think that's as good of a criteria for picks as any. So that's gonna wrap it up for us here this week. Hopefully, some of our crazier picks might allow us to close the gap on Sam a little bit, stop him from taking the.
It's
the
not
top.
just me.
That's true.
Sam
It's you and Darby.
Darby's out there
You
going
and-
under the radar.
Yeah, you and
But
Darby.
you see, I accept Darby as my Lord and Savior.
Yeah, you look, you've been slowly but surely catching up. She jumped out to a really early lead, but now we've got a race on our hands, and there's an outside shot for someone like Ethan or even Kate if all of these picks hit to make a run here. So it'll be interesting. Hey, Faith, Kate.
Hey, if we say that Kate's under Chuck E. Cheese again, then somehow she will be blessed enough to get all of her picks right.
There we go. Let's hope that happens here. But that'll do it for us here tonight. Thank you all for joining us here for the WatchHaus preview show. For Kate, for Ethan, for Sam, I've been your host, Shy Guy. From our house to yours, thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Peace.